Welcome in. Thanks so much for joining me again. For those of you who are joining me for the first time or are newer to my podcast and YouTube channel, my name is Scott, and I tend to offer both practical Buddhism and practical meditation advice here on my YouTube channel and in my podcast. I'm really happy you're joining me. If you're new here, if you've been listening for a while and watching for a while, just want to thank you very much for continuing to enjoy the content, I hope. So in this episode, I'd like to discuss actually a question from one of you. So I do like to reach out and sort of ask, how's it going? Is the content that I create regularly for my podcast and YouTube channel, is it resonating? Is it helping your Dharma practice and meditation practice? And once in a while, I do get a response. And so I'll say to those of you actually watching this, if you'd like to respond to this, comment on my YouTube channel, send me a message on my website if you'd like at scotttusa.com. I really appreciate it. It helps me to know the content is landing and helping you. And also, you're welcome to ask something else, and maybe I'll make some new content on that question that you send me. And that's the case today. So one of our fellow community here basically watched a video that I made recently on working with overcaring or anxious caring, and how and why we waste our energy on that. And in that video, I go into detail on my own experience with that. Also, how to tell the difference a little bit, but this person had a further question based on that, and so I'll read the question, and then that's what we'll discuss here in this episode. So the question goes: can you please talk more about how to discern if a situation needs my nervous system to be activated, and what techniques do you use to get better at, quote, dropping it? Right. So in that video, if you want to go watch it, I described a little bit about a dropping practice that one of my teachers, Sonia Rinpoche, teaches. You can learn more about it from him at fullybeing.org, or you can also, of course, engage some of the content on this channel, and I often discuss it. And we'll discuss it here a little bit more. But first, I'd like to talk about the first part of the question, just asking how do we discern if a situation needs us to be stressed, anxious, fearful, and our nervous system activated? This is a tough one to answer universally, right? Because we all have our unique life situations. Those sometimes are like social, cultural, national, like where we grew up, what country, what state, what kind of place, what our communities are like, what our families are like. So I just want to say that I don't have like an answer, right? This is just an individual thing we have to explore. I'll say a few things, but before going into that, especially when we extend on this in the dropping section, where I'll talk more about dropping practice here. One of the main ways I use to discern when I need an activated nervous system or more speediness rather than less speediness, that's something I've learned to discern more and more through actual practice. So that's kind of the first thing, and probably last thing I'll say. I'll remind us at the end. We learn to discern our own nervous system, what's needed versus what's sort of neurotic and overcaring, which is just going to add to stress. It's not necessarily helping a given situation, right? I discussed that in the previous video. So we learn to discern that through somatic awareness, right? So dropping practice is a type of somatic practice. We'll do a little bit of that here. And I also have lots of guided meditations on that in, similar things on my website. As I already said, my teacher, Sonia Rinpoche, check out his course called Fully Being. Highly recommend that. And yeah, so that's the first thing. The I would say more sustainable, but harder earned version of this answer is to practice, right? And then we start to navigate, we start to decrease our speediness, we start to have more interoceptive awareness, ability to tell the difference between activation and groundedness, and then we know when we need it and don't need it, right? So that's kind of, that takes time. That's not a quick fix. So other than that, I would say, in my experience, I would say most of the time we do not need an anxious or overactivated nervous system. I think, there's probably people much more qualified than me to discuss this. But biologically, there our bodies developed. Some would say like more hunter-gatherer style living. I don't know if that's completely true, as there's been quite a bit of time since then into the agricultural movement, industrial revolution, and now whatever the heck we're moving into. And so, as hunter-gatherers, as an example, this is often used. I don't know if I believe this 100%, as, we have to look a little deeper, but, there's some, I think, validity here. We had to activate our nervous system to basically forage, to find food and water, to not starve, and to run if there was a dangerous situation, right? So the fight or flight modes of the body, right, were more triggered by an unnatural environment. Where now we still more or less have a very similar body, though of course it's evolved and changed, but there's a lot of similarities in the nervous system, and we don't necessarily have to run from a tiger, as an example, right? But we often get into situations where the nervous system is overactivated more than it needs to be, and we can have can feel like we have many tigers around us. So that's something where we need to discern the difference between, what's an actual threat and what's not a threat. And like I said, I can't I can't describe this for you personally, but we all know that in the modern world, our nervous systems get challenged, both from a lot of speediness and overactivity. Also, I would add in there, like habits of overthinking. I've struggled with that a lot, just sort of taught to think a lot to problem solve. I'm not sure if every human being on earth does that, and I'm not sure if our ancestors did that as much as we do. What this does is it speeds up the nervous system and creates overactivity, which then we actually see more threats than there are. I wasn't planning to talk on this specific point, but I'll just say it because I think it's included. Of course, some of us have trauma, and trauma gets lodged in the body, either trauma that happened over a long period of time or a strong experience. And then, of course, our body is going to be shaped or habituated to find threats. How do you say it? Like, it was valid at some point, meaning there was an actual threat and our body responded properly. But now that threat is getting superimposed on other things that don't necessarily need that type of reaction. And then this has nothing to do with us being a good or bad person or any of that. It's just how the body responds. It's natural. And so, of course, we can learn to do some practices to work with that trauma. There's, whole fields, therapists available, all that kind of stuff. And so if we feel or suspect we need some kind of help in that area, I highly recommend it. It's not what I specialize in, but I highly recommend it. What's helped me a lot is somatic work, and just being a meditator for a long period of time. That's helped me to really understand and when my nervous system is overreacting, how to regulate it through mostly, as I said, somatic practices. Dropping is one of them, which we'll get into today. But it was kind of, it's hard won for me. It's not like a quick thing. It's taken some years, and I still do get activated. And I don't think that's really the issue. If our nervous systems get activated, if we get stressed, it's fine. We just have to know how to come back down. We know how to find our ground again, right? That's really important. Knowing how to come back, knowing when it's activated, knowing how to come back. Now, per this question, it's like also, it is necessary sometimes. Like maybe we have to move quickly to get something done. But if we're moving quickly all the time to get things done, that's a sign that maybe there's a little too much neurotic care going on, right? Neurotic, I just mean we're not, how do you say it? We're not giving things their proper energy. We're in a little bit of a challenging kind of dynamic with our life. And a lot of us are like this. We try to get things done fast. I don't know about you. I've been in a situation many times where I'm stressed. My nervous system is activated, and I'm I don't know how I say it. I'm rushing through everything, trying to get it done, and then I get things done, and I'm just sitting there wondering, what do I do now? And there's all this stress wanting to do things, but there's not necessarily anything to do, right? I mean, maybe I can find something to do, right? A lot of us do that. We distract ourselves. We end up just sort of cleaning parts of the house that are already clean. And again, nothing's wrong with you or me for this. We just have to recognize the actual problem and recognize there's a remedy. We can slow down the speediness. We can learn to work with practices or as I said, therapists or all kinds of techniques to heal, basically. So that's what I would say. If we notice we're kind of always rushy, kind of always speedy, that's a sign there's a lot of overactivity. And so, as I said, obviously, I don't know, in a life-threatening situation, we need to, it would be odd to not respond with stress, right? Let's say we get in a car accident, but definitely the nervous system is going to be overactivated. Learning how to bring it back down after the car accident is important. Learning to work with the stress and trauma of that. But either way, that would be a type of situation. It would be totally reasonable for the nervous system to get very activated, right? I think sometimes in my personal relationships, when I'm, in a stalemate with someone or struggling with communication, or they're having a hard day, this activates my nervous system as well. And some of that is normal. I think some of that is part of our compassion and love response. But again, like I said, we need to be able to discern over time the difference between proper care, what's needed, and overcaring. So I think a lot about this with my daughter, as if I'm able to resonate in let's just say a more calmer state with her, and or more what I call more groundedness in the body, I notice that really helps her, right? Because we're all kind of little cell towers or sort of energy towers communicating with each other all the time. Very little of our communication is through words, actually. And so we pick up on that energy. And so when someone else is stressed around us, we start to buzz, we start to get stressed. So thinking about it in a whole nother way, one of the kindest ways we can interact with people and learn to care for them in a healthy way is through working with our nervous system. If we're able to stay more grounded, and by more grounded, I also don't mean aloof and sort of suppressing things. That's not genuine groundedness. That's suppression. So we need to learn to open to things with compassion, find compassion. I generally do that through somatic practice. And then we can find some groundedness, not all the time, but we know how to come back there. And then we can resonate that for others in our life, especially our kids. Who really need that. Because the world is, as we know, it's very fast, it's very busy. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of speediness. There's a lot of aggression, unfortunately. And, everyone's trying to find their way, but we follow patterns, right? And so one of the biggest services we can do to ourselves and others is to heal and find groundedness repeatedly. But as I said, I think generally, not knowing each of you's individual situation, when there's a life-threatening situation, obviously having an overactive nervous system is appropriate. Like that. So what I found, and this is just sort of for me personally, very little of my life needs me to be stressed, right? Very little. Like probably 1% to 2%, very little. Am I stressed much more than that? Do I have an overactive nervous system more than 1% to 2%? Definitely, because I'm still working on my stuff, just like I'm sure you are. But I've noticed very little, and that helps me a lot because it helps me to remember, there's something distorted here happening on top of what's needed, and then I can work with it in a kind way. Again, kindness means there's no judgment towards me personally. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not flawed or messed up, nor do I believe there's anything flawed or messed up with you. It's just the body. The body has habit patterns, as I said, sometimes trauma, and it repeats. So we can change that. We can augment that. That's the good news. So now getting into the second part of the question, what techniques do I use to get better at dropping it, right? So usually when I say dropping it, I'm referring to a specific practice that Sonia Rinpoche, my teacher, fullybeing.org, he calls dropping, right? So some of you who are probably watching or listening know this already. You're maybe students of his. Some of you maybe never heard of him before, but check out fullybeing.org. But basically, dropping is a practice where we purposefully drop physically. We might breathe out, and then mentally, emotionally, we just attempt to release. Release means release into the body and be or feel the body. So attempt is a big one here, because some people, what they do, they think they should be feeling something or dropping something, and they notice when they do this practice, they're still hanging on, right? That's totally normal. And so what we do is we drop again and again and again and again, repeatedly, right? We might do this in a formal meditation practice for however long you have, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. Or you might do it throughout the day. And over time, we're retraining the body and nervous system. We're retraining the mind that we don't have to gnaw or chew on something all the time. We don't always have to be thinking about something. We can actually just come into the body, find some groundedness in the body, and rest there without having to do anything, right? For me particularly, this took time. So for some of you out there as well, it's not going to be immediate. It comes with practice, right? Just want to emphasize that. But it's really helpful, and it does work. One analogy for this dropping practice that I really like from Sonia Rinpoche is, imagine yourself on a long trek or hike in the mountains. We're talking hours, and you're carrying a heavy backpack because you got your water, your food, whatever else. And you take a rest, right? And you sit down on some grass or a rock to take a rest. And, the question here is, what is the difference when you take that rest between leaving your backpack on, your heavy backpack, and you're sitting there with the heaviness of the backpack that you've been walking with all day, and simply sitting there and taking the backpack off and putting it next to you? So this practice is the practice of attempting to take the backpack off, right? As I said, attempting is a big one here, right? We don't want to put pressure. We need to get somewhere or do it correctly. This will definitely cause stress. So we just attempt to release the backpack, and we do it again and again. So when we're dropping it, we're doing it in short moments, and we're practicing that many times. So you're doing short moments. Maybe you're just dropping for 30 seconds or a minute. Things come back, thoughts reinsert themselves, etc. Do it again, right? Here it's totally fine if there's thoughts, by the way. It's just the difference between getting hooked by a thought and allowing thoughts to arise and fall, which we learn in general meditation practice. So when I say dropping it, that's what I'm recommending here, right? And this is the main technique I use. So here's kind of what it looks like, though when you get used to it over time, you don't necessarily have to always do the physical movement. So it looks like this. And so as I'm physically dropping, as I'm breathing out, I'm actually dropping internally into my lower body. You could drop anywhere, but I find that really helpful because when we focus on the chest, throat, and head, we're actually bringing up energies in the body that are there to cause movement and speed. So when we drop lower, it really helps. So try it with me. Just let go. Drop the backpack. Don't hang on. Just let it drop. We just rest with the body, with the feeling in the body. We can even rest with the activation itself. feeling the buzz, the speediness. Don't reject, but allow yourself to relax too. Allow yourself to just let everything drop for a moment. It's only for a moment. Be with the body. There's nothing to get. We're not trying to do anything. We're not even trying to relax. Just be. Okay, so let's do it one more time. Okay, so similar to other meditation practices, there's some mindful awareness here, just a little bit. But what's different is we're not actually trying to maintain anything. We're not trying to get anywhere with the practice. The main thing is allowing ourselves to just fully drop and rest, and doing that for a short moment. Again, you can do it for however long you want, but repeating it really helps because it starts to break the pattern of hanging on and sort of keeping that backpack really tight, right? That's the main thing we're trying to break. That we start to learn to let be. And some other content I've done, an extension of this is what's called the handshake practice, also from Sonny Rinpoche, also in his course Fully Being, fullybeing.org. This practice, handshaking, is kind of an extension if we're having a lot of trouble dealing with a certain part of our somatic experience, be it an emotion, a trauma response, just a stagnation, right? So handshake practice can be an extension. I have some guided meditations on my website if you also want to see what I'm offering there. But it all comes from my teacher, Sonny Rinpoche. So you might as well go to the source. Okay, so that's about it. If you have any more thoughts on this, as always, if you want to share in the comments, I really appreciate it. If you have more questions, let me know, and I'll continue to make content. Thanks so much.